Hi everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Berry, coming at you from the Studio Jake bunker. Why is that? Because my regular setup is kind of being changed, so I'm taking my time with it because I want it to look nice. So I'm here in the bunker, as I like to call it. But anyway, I'm your host, Jacob Berry. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, ring the little bell because YouTube is doing this weird thing where they're curating your subscriptions. There's talk of shadow banning. And so you can ring the bell and you should get notifications whenever I do a live stream like this or something else whenever I upload a video or whatnot. So today I'm going to jump right into my main topic, okay? So I do a lot of complaining about how DC Comics has been running Batman lately. And to be clear, I'm not going to hate on some of the modern writers like James Tynion and Peter J. Tomasi. I think they're doing fine runs on Batman. Not Tom King did in the beginning. And my problem with New 52, which again, Scott Snyder had this fantastic start. He had like a wonderful beginning, you know, going from Court of Owls and Death in the Family and even into Endgame. But then he did that weird series where Commissioner Gordon was Batman in a mech suit. Now, also, it's kind of the same with the current run of Detective Comics. Tynion had this great story arc where Batman and Batwoman have kind of turned the clock tower into what they call the Belfry, and it's like a base, and it's more like a James Bondish type situation. It's really good, and it was good. I mean, some of the interpersonal relationships were kind of aggravating, so like the whole thing with Spoiler and Anarchy, but overall, I guess it was good. I mean, I had a good time. I gave him good reviews on my blog, especially with the artwork. The artwork's fantastic. Now, Tynion comes in. Tomasi comes in, and again, Tomasi is a fine writer, but the whole Arkham Knight arc, which I talked about in a previous episode, it was not really that good, and I kind of had a lame twist at the end that everyone saw coming. And and then he does the Spectre. Now, I will say his most recent issue, which I'll review on my blog in the next couple of days, where the Joker is on a roller coaster ride with Batman, that was a really good standalone story. Now, you might be saying, but Jacob, you have positively reviewed certain stories. Yes. Way back, on my blog, I reviewed Tomasi's Batman Arkham Knight Genesis, and recently I gave really high praise to this story, to Batman the Dark Knight, or excuse me, the Batman the Dark Prince Charming. But I want to be sure I get his first name right, because his last name is just on everything, if I can find it. Oh my gosh, where's this guy's name? Enrico Marini. It is a fantastic story. It is really great. I loved it from beginning to end. He said that Bruce Timm and Paul Dini were big-time inspirations for his story, and it shows. I mean, it shows magnificently. It's really well written. There's just, what do these two have in common? They're out of continuity. Currently, all of kind of the best Batman stories are coming out of independent writers and artists, because the main storyline is fraught with a bunch of, oh, this real weird pop-up. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, there we go. Are fraught with studio interference. Now, Tom King won the Eisner Award at San Diego Comic-Con for Best Writer. And I was kind of miffed by this, because he won specifically for Batman, Heroes in Crisis, which was a terrible story with a terrible ending. And I talk about that in my episode, Why Does DC Comics Hate Wally West? And Swamp Thing, I guess, Holiday Special. I didn't read that one, so it could be good. I don't know. I'm not a big Swamp Thing fan. It's the only series I thought Alan Moore did a good job on. But anyway, I'm reading, but then I talked with someone who is somewhat of an insider in the comic books industry, and I was complaining about why they made Tom King Best Writer, and I was complaining about some of the other picks, but that one in particular really bothered me, because after issue 50, which is the wedding issue, the story just falls apart. I mean, the last 25 to so on issues have just been terrible, and it's been how ever since. Basically, he positions it to Bane has been behind everything since the I believe it was called I Am Bane. I think that was what it was called, the I Am Bane story arc, that he wanted revenge on Batman. So him and the Flashpoint Thomas Wayne have been doing this big, what's the word I'm looking for? This big conspiracy to get Batman alienated from his allies and rejected by Gotham, and they succeed, and then they take over Gotham. Spoiler, kind of the Dark Knight Rises style. So it's a pretty terrible story arc, and the way Batman the Wedding ended was pretty bad. I mean, it was everyone was just stunned, and so I was talking to my friend in the comic books industry, and I'm like, why would they win? Did he win because of the War on Joseph Riddles? Because that was a fantastic story arc. Or did he win, or why? And she goes, well, Jacob, honestly, DC Comics, the studio, has been interfering with the rights. There's been accusations of interference in all their story arcs. And she said, especially in Tom King's Batman. And so him winning the award was more the people in charge of the Eisner saying, okay, Tom, we know that you kind of got a bad rap because there's studio interference, so we're going to show you that the stand in solidarity, we're going to recognize this. And this actually makes sense because Tom King has made a couple of comments in that regard. He said, because when a fan confronted him about how Wally West was treated in Heroes in Crisis, he said, hey, I just wrote the story, DC Comics gave me the names. And there's been other like pockets of discussion about that, because that's always been a problem with DC, is they have really bad studio interference. It happened with the creator of Black Lightning, and then they tried to cheat him out of the rights of his character. It happened with Siegel and Schuster, the guys who created Superman. They cheated them out of their rights, and the families have been suing nonstop. It happened with Bill Finger, who's the co-creator of Batman. DC Comics has always had like this problem, so I'm not really surprised. And if that's the case, then yeah, sure, give Tom King the award. And really, it comes down to, and this is, so I talk about this. I'm going to be on You Got It with Warrior Woman 91 on Tuesday, and we're gonna, and it was a pre-record, and we talked about this a little bit, how it seems like DC Comics is in this phase where they're just slapping their fans in the face. And you see this with especially Young Justice, where people wanted to see their classic characters. And one of the interesting things about season 1 and season 2 was they really relied on Golden Age, Silver Age mythology, and then going into season 3, all of a sudden, wow! And I say this in my review, we're hit with a lot of social justice stuff that didn't fit, and the storyline is chaotic and all this. So, bottom line is, I really feel that DC Comics has lost its way, and especially with Batman. So, how would I fix Batman is the big question, because people keep saying, Jacob, you have all these criticisms, you have all these critiques, but you're not offering any solutions. I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm not. So this time, for this video, I am going to talk about how DC Comics should fix Batman. And again, this is nothing against Tynion or Tomasi or even King, especially if studio interference is involved. This is just how they can do a course correction on Batman. One thing that really bothered me in the post-Scott Snyder era is they've kind of taken on this thing where Batman has alienated himself away from everyone, including Alfred. And this has bothered, and even King does this. Now, the Batman title has kind of traditionally just been Batman and Robin or Batman and Alfred. It's always, because the focus is always on Batman, but his allies are usually seen in like Detective Comics and other titles that they had, like Batman and Robin and whatnot. And I really feel that DC Comics needs to get back to that, where Batman had like a core family, because we see this especially in White Knight, just how quickly Sean Gordon Murphy, who is a really good artist but a terrible writer, and now I haven't read Curse of the White Knight yet, but I reviewed Batman White Knight before. You can go back and watch that. I think it was called Why I Hate Batman White Knight, and whatnot. And so what they need to do is they're tipping the scale where Batman isn't dark and brooding. They're tipping it where he's just kind of grim and angsty, if you ask my opinion. He acts kind of like an angsty teenager who's also real grim. And it's kind of funny because in the Batman Who Laughs, which is a fantastic story by Scott Snyder, but again, he's missing some of his key allies. It's they have this other character that's working with the Batman Who Laughs called the Grim Knight, and I review his one shot in one of my vlogs. They talk about this, and Batman is just actually more like the Grim Knight, just without the guns. And that's just his whole persona right now, is he's this grim, angsty vigilante. And they really need to get back to the Neil Adams, the Denny O'Neil, the Chuck Dixon days of comic books, because one of the things that made Batman so iconic was that he could be a mentor to some of these kids who are also lost in the same way he was lost. What makes Batman unique is not the fact that he suffered tragedy, it's how he dealt with his tragedy. Some people choose to move on with their lives or make things better through charity and gift giving, and they kind of talk about this sometimes in the Batman mythos. But what makes him special was how he went about doing it, not just giving to charity or giving to the police, but he was going to take on the burden himself in protecting Gotham City and the people of it. And then he was mentoring his sidekicks and his partners into this kind of mentality. And I really feel like people have been misplacing his darkness and his brooding and whatnot for this. And so we need to get back to Batman has allies to bounce off of, because the way they've been writing Alfred recently has been this sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Like he's been kind of a father figure. You definitely saw this in All-Star Batman, which not the All-Star Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder by Frank Miller, but just the All-Star Batman by Scott Snyder, which was a fantastic run of Batman. And he's more like Batman's trainer and butler. It was I believe that it was where his codename Penny One came from. And I really feel like that they need to and the Signal was really big in that one. They need to give Batman allies that he can bounce off of that kind of give credence. So I would return Detective Comics to the way it was when Tinian was first writing it. He's assigning missions, they're doing teamwork, and in some issues, one ally is spotlighted, and then another, like there's like especially Tinian, one thing he was really good at was kind of rotating them. So like Azrael was big in one issue, and then Batwing was big in one issue, and then Batwoman was big in one issue. It was absent Batgirl, which I know she's soloed, but still, I haven't really found a good writer for her either. Because I'm a big Barbara Gordon fan, but they haven't really found a good writer for her recently as well. So I would do something like that. I think that, especially in Detective Comics, they need to give him someone who's a little bit lighter, a little bit younger, that he can bounce off ideas on. If you don't want to make it Nightwing, because I know they're doing this phase where he's called Dark and Brooding because he got shot. Wah, wah, wah. I'm sorry, I don't mean it like that, but Nightwing has been shot several times. I know this time he got shot in the head, so he's kind of acting out of character. And that's another thing. Why isn't Batman helping him? Dick Grayson is kind of his first son. I know Damian is his real son, blah, 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 for all the Damian fanboys. But they need to have those connections restored. And I know the Bat family almost got too big. And so it's kind of hard to keep track of everyone, which is why they need to do a rotating cast. And that's what I'm saying. They need to stop doing the solo bats, at least for one of their titles. They need to bring back the Batman family for him to talk to. And to Tomasi's credit, that he did do that in Arkham Knight, but Arkham Knight was just an inferior storyline to the one he had written previously, the Arkham Knight Genesis. So I would, this is just my take on it. That's what I would do. They need to bring back Batman's allies. And if they want to keep Batman as a solo title with just him and Alfred, they need to give him another sidekick. So if they don't, if Red Robin is off at university and Dick Grayson's, or Rick Grayson, whatever, is in Bloodhaven, and Catwoman's in Brentwood running around with the Birds of Prey, Batwoman has been rejected because she killed one of their allies. They need to bring back at least Red Robin and Orphan, someone that he can bounce off of, who's there. And I know the Orphan is in Batman and the Outsiders, the new version, which I think is really cool. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to actually wait for the trade paperback before I dive fully into it. But anyway, that's kind of my take on it. That's how I would fix Batman. I hope that makes sense, DC Comics. I hope you're listening. And also, how to bring this about, because these modern writers just don't seem interested in that. This is clear even with King and even Scott Snyder to some extent. They need to maybe bring some of these other writers out of retirement. Bring back Mike Baron, bring back Chuck Dixon, bring back Neil Adams. And I know Neil Adams is still working on comics, but they need to get some of the good all-stars back. Grant Morrison even. And I know Chuck Dixon, he's a Republican, so they're mad at him or whatever, but they need to get over that. It's time to move on. Trump is the president, and this kind of vitriol that we're seeing in the comic book industry and the entertainment industry and so on and so forth, this has got to stop, because you're losing talent and it's showing DC Comics. And the same goes to Marvel. All these good writers are being alienated just because of a political opinion, and that is sad. And I'm so sad to see this with Batman, who's one of my favorite characters, because Batman has always kind of transcended politics. And while Tomasi and Snyder and Tynion and King have been really good about keeping politics out of it, you can still kind of see like the sprinkling of how it's affecting the writing, because they're afraid to take risk like they did, like with Two Nights of the Beast, which was the enemy, it was a Cold War story, and the enemy was a Cold War antagonist, and they took that risk, and it really paid off. And DC Comics needs to get out of this funk where they're worried about offending SJWs, because it's really hurting the quality of the comic books. So that's my take on it. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know where you think I'm wrong. I'm always happy to hear from you. Let me know. And again, I'm not disparaging any of these guys' writers. I'm just saying that even Scott Snyder and Tynion and early King, it's just not to the level of people like Neil Adams or Denny O'Neil or Chuck Dixon or any of the previous writers. Honestly, if they hadn't chased away Christopher Priest, who's now writing Vampirella, he would make a fantastic Batman writer. I would love to see his take on it. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. Who are some people you think would be good writers for Batman? Let me know. I'd be interested to hear. So that's all the time I have for today. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at RealJacobAiry. Instagram is the same, at RealJacobAiry. Facebook is author Jacob Airy. My blog is jacobair.blog. There I've got comic book reviews, graphic novel reviews, movie reviews, television reviews. I'm starting to branch off into television, people. So definitely check all of those out. Also, be sure to like this video, leave me a comment, subscribe to this channel, share it, let your friends know I'm out here. Pick yourself a copy of my novel, The Seven Royals, All Good Things. It's a fantasy story that has some of your favorite fairy tales like The Brave Woodsman, Prince Charming, Hansel from Hansel and Gretel. So check out all of that and head over to barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, and if you want, Apple actually has it. You can download it for your e-reader off Apple. I know what you can do the same off Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but I always just think it's kind of cool that you can get books off iTunes. So thank you so much for watching. Once again, big Batman fan. I hope you enjoyed this. I will definitely see you next time right here on Studio Jake.